What's going on, everybody? Iconic Repaints back again. This is the second video in a new series that I want to do, focusing on the Godzilla films one by one and kind of pinpointing certain things that I feel like don't get talked about enough, or just kind of leave a lasting impression on me over the years. Started off, of course, with Gojira, 1954. There's never a bad time to watch that movie. It's always a treat. This one, on the other hand, this one could be a little tougher. Now, again, I don't plan on repeating, saying things that have been said dozens and dozens of times. Yes, this movie's not nearly as good as Godzilla 1954. The human characters are not as interesting. They leave a lot to be desired. The storyline is, pretty basic. It's not as imaginative, but I want to talk about a couple things that I found cool on this rewatch, or things that I liked about it. So, Godzilla Raids Again. This was, as a kid, one of the more confusing movies to me for a couple reasons. Obviously, when I used to see this, those of you who are old enough to remember going to a Blockbuster or a Suncoast and looking at Godzilla VHS tapes. First of all, this one always had a really cool VHS cover art. Second of all, a lot of times this movie is not called Godzilla Raids Again, it's called Gigantus the Fire Monster. Who the fuck is Gigantus the Fire Monster? I don't know, but it's supposed to be Godzilla. This was really confusing to me as a kid in 1996, right? Watching this movie in the American dubbed version was a goofy experience, but they also, for whatever reason, kind of switched the roars back and forth between the monsters. So sometimes Godzilla is roaring Anguirus' roar, and sometimes Anguirus is roaring Godzilla's roar. Very confusing. Don't know why they did it, but I don't want to sit here and bitch about the movie. Let's talk about some things that stuck out to me. One thing I think this movie does well is it shows what's to come between the two monsters in the very beginning, with Godzilla and Anguirus already fighting at the start of the film and kind of tumbling into the ocean. So they give a little background on Anguirus himself, and there's something that stands out. They have paleontologists and scientists talk about Anguirus and pulling from some book where it indicates that Anguirus was, as a species, 150 feet to 200 feet tall. That's not post-nuclear bomb. That's what his species was in prehistoric times. What the hell? This thing was always massive. For some reason, I always assumed, like Godzilla, he was a nuclear mutation, right? Kind of enhanced in size and power and strength because of nuclear bombs. Not only did I assume this from watching the 1954 movie, but Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in 1991 showed a smaller Godzilla dinosaur that eventually became a huge hulking beast because of nuclear bombs. Godzilla -1, same thing. So this was something I hadn't noticed before. Anguirus was always this massive creature that probably would have wiped out all the other creatures that were a part of his timeline. So what does that mean for Godzilla? Because now I'm having a moment of self-doubt. Like, did Godzilla not also grow because of nuclear bombs in the 1954 movie? Was he always just massive species that just happened to get pissed off and had charred skin and now an atomic breath? Was he just always a giant monster? I mean, I knew there was a pre-existing legend from him from Odo Island, and I just always assumed that he was still a large monster, kind of like the Loch Ness Monster, right? Not necessarily a huge, creature that was stomping through cities later on, but maybe he was always supposed to be that. I pictured in my head something more like what actually was in -1. Now, a second thing that kind of stuck out to me is big plot point of this movie is they lure Godzilla and manipulate his path with lights and flares. Apparently, this Godzilla is attracted to light. It kind of reminds me again of the scene in -1 when Godzilla is on Odo Island and he's immediately hit with the beach light, and he goes apeshit, right? So kind of I wonder if that's the same intention. Like, I wonder if that's kind of like an Easter egg where in Godzilla Minus One, they were referencing back to this film where light attracts Godzilla. Obviously, it was a lot more dramatic of a response in Minus One. But this plot kind of becomes really important because the military is actually succeeding in luring Godzilla away. And of course, you have this, for what it's worth, I'm going to call it a jailbreak, even though it's technically not. But these criminals go and get into this police chase, and they end up crashing a tanker truck and causing this massive explosion. Of course, it's an oddball way of starting the flow of destruction, especially compared to the prior film, which was a lot more deliberate. I also find it funny that, like, wouldn't the police not necessarily be driving around with criminals in the car, knowing that the military is trying to keep Godzilla away? I mean, I think of all excuses and reasons to be like, let's maybe postpone this to another night. That will be it. I mean, there's literally a giant, gargantuan, radioactive monster coming to your shores, and you're a few miles away. Like, call out. I also want to acknowledge this movie for, probably unbeknownst to anybody making this movie, that this one started as such an amazing trend of Godzilla kind of fighting another monster. I believe this is one of the first films that really featured that in the kind of marquee way that it did. And it probably is the reason why Godzilla as a series sustained as long as he has. Again, they probably didn't know at the time, because after this movie and the negative feedback from it, it took about 7 years for Godzilla to get back on screen. And that probably maybe almost didn't happen. Now, this movie can't even touch Godzilla 1954 and in terms of quality, right? But in some regards, I find this particular Godzilla creepier. I think as a horror villain, he probably even works a little better. The way he moves, largely due to the frame rate of this film being shot at the wrong speed, but the way he even just kind of floats through the water as he's coming to shore. Again, probably not intentional, probably just a restriction in the practical effects. They couldn't make it any way else, but it comes across with the black and white and the speed of the movie, the way everything is shot. It looks so creepy the way this guy drifts through the water just super fast, like a floating head, because that's in essence what he is. But very creepy. The puppet is terrifying, goofy but terrifying. The quick, jerky, erratic movements really add to it, and it's almost a shame that it wasn't deliberate, because they did something. I mean, it's very unnerving, right? So it goes to my final point. What makes this even more amazing to me is that this Godzilla is literally the same Godzilla for the next 13 movies after that, which is including, of course, infamously known, is that it is his transformation into the protector and defender of Earth, into full-fledged Saturday morning cartoon superhero good guy monster. But that pretty much does it for me. What about you guys? What are your thoughts about this movie? What did you walk away from after watching this for the first time? Godzilla Raids Again. Sound off. I'd love to hear your opinions about it. Until then, until next time, everybody be safe. Peace.